You probably know the legend of Johnny Appleseed, but did you know that he was an actual person and his real story is perhaps a little stranger than you might imagine? It involved apples, sure, though nobody really ever ate them. Then there was his side hustle as a real estate mogul and his infatuation with a Swedish mystic. Today, we glimpse the man behind the myth and visit the one patch of American soil where his legacy purportedly still literally lives on. Johnny Appleseed was born John Chapman right near this spot in Leominster, Massachusetts, just before the American Revolution broke out. Around age 18, with his mother long dead and his father now remarried, Chapman and his younger half-brother hit the road. The Chapman boys rambled through New England into western Pennsylvania and Ohio. It was there, in the early 1800s, that Chapman parted ways with his brother and found apples and God.
He fell under the influence of the Church of the New Jerusalem, which was based on the writings of Emanuel Swedenborg.
Swedenborg was an 18th century Swedish scientist turned theologian and mystic, whose followers had a respect for nature that likely appealed to the young Chapman.
He was a vegetarian. He never would have killed anything. He once doused a fire rather than have mosquitoes burn up in the flames.
It could also help explain why Chapman took to planting apple trees the way he did. See, he didn't cut or graft. He believed that a tree could actually feel it if he took a knife to it. Instead, he learned to plant directly from seed that he collected from pumice, the spent pulp left over in a cider press.
He'd take his apple seeds he got from the mills in Pennsylvania. He'd plant them out there. He'd put the brambles around so deer and other animals wouldn't get underneath the seedlings.
Chapman planted some 100,000 square miles of apple nurseries in this manner as he wandered for decades through Ohio and later Indiana. And this also allowed him to spread the word about his church and amass a pretty sweet real estate portfolio.
They would let people have free land on the very front of the frontier, but they didn't want to have land speculators doing this. So they required them to plant nurseries. And within 5 years, you had to have either an apple nursery or a peach or pear nursery up and running that had about 30 to 50 trees.
At the time of his death, he owned 1,200 acres of land. The fruit from Chapman's trees were wild apples, small, green, sour, not particularly tasty. In fact, they were called spitters. But what they were good for is hard cider.
People drank a heck of a lot of cider in the frontier. In fact, the frontier, if you look at the records, looks like an alcoholic haze just settled over it.
Johnny Appleseed is often portrayed as eccentric, and Chapman decidedly was. He lived a nomadic bachelor life. He never married or had kids. He stayed mostly in the woods and slept most nights outside. He walked barefoot, wore tattered clothes, and yes, likely sometimes a metal hat that doubled as a cooking pot or a container. But he was also famously generous and kind to strangers and children.
I think he thought that angels talked to him every night he was in the woods, and that was in the woods, because he was communing. And he was being told, as Swedenborg had been told in his dreams at night, the true nature of things.
By the time he was in his 30s, Chapman had earned the nickname Johnny Appleseed, and tales of his eccentric look, narrow escapes from death, and gentle spirit were already growing tall.
I'm convinced he was complicit in his own myth-making. He wanted to be something else, something unique from the frontier. I think he wanted to become Johnny Appleseed.
Today, Johnny Appleseed's legend lives on all over, from books to stamps to baseball clubs. But on a small family farm in Ohio, there is a piece of Chapman's legacy that is still actually living.
We are just outside of Savannah, Ohio, where the last known surviving Johnny Appleseed tree is behind me.
This land has been in Algeo Young's family since the 1830s, and the tree is the last remnant of what was once a nursery or orchard.
My grandmother and my aunt would just say, oh, we always have to take care of the tree. And their grandmother talked about when John Chapman would come out and just check on the tree.
This smaller tree sprung up from the root of the main tree that stood until the early 2000s, and so it's considered part of the original tree, certified as authentic in the 1990s by American Forests.
The bark itself is from the original tree. The tree, before it was taken in a storm, it had a 4-foot diameter. I mean, you could literally hug it like this. You can see the wire stretched across to the other tree. They're kind of holding each other up. And we do have People stop by every now and then that just want to see it. It's a piece of history and it means something to people.
Chapman died at the age of 70 in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where he was laid to rest, though there is some dispute about exactly where. His epithet? 4 simple words. He lived for others.
I think he was a man driven by overwhelming kindness wrapped in overwhelming eccentricity. And it produced a character that naturally drifted toward myth.
If you want to rock us to our core, give us a like or subscribe. Our thanks to Emerson College for always keeping us curious. I'm Edgar B. Harwick III. You stay curious out there.